Oh,
Please.
yes, you are.
Okay, hello everyone, welcome to Maple's chapter, the Florida Native Plant site. So nice to see everybody here. We're very lucky today to have a speaker, Sally Stein. Anybody join Corkscrew, you're going to take a walk. If it's in the evenings, in the morning, to see different birds. We did a butterfly count. Sally is generally going to be the leader for that in Corkscrew, and she's wonderful. Any questions you have on anything, Sally is the expert. So we're very excited to have you here tonight.
Here we go.
Okay, so Maple's chapter, Florida Native Plant. What is our mission, Sarah? What's our mission?
To preserve, conserve, and restore native plants and native plant communities of Florida.
And of course, we have chosen here the tropical royal blue water lily as our symbol. Well, I feel that I became christened about a week ago when I was at Corkscrew, and what did I see and take a picture of? Here, the tropical royal blue water lily. So it's here and it's actually in Corkscrew. I was with Sally at the time when I saw it. So if anybody wants to see our native, who's doing that? They're in bloom right now in Corkscrew.
How long do they bloom for?
They bloom anywhere from about July through October, usually.
Wow. Stunning to see in the wild. Yeah, you least expect it. I think there were some little alligators around there at the time, some butterflies flying around, just stunning.
Do they turn blue?
They're a little bit blue, right?
Shades of blue in them.
Shades of blue. If it's really royal blue, I'm not so sure, but okay, here are our chapter leaders. We would love to include people who are in this room tonight. If you would like to be interested in committees or part of our leadership team, it would be a pleasure to have you. Great group of people. Actually, let's see, Sarah, would you like to stand up and just raise your hand? We have someone new here today, just so that, yes, Sarah is on our leadership team. She's the chapter rep with the other chapters. How many chapters are there in Florida for the Native Plant Society?
Around 20-some.
20-some.
24-ish.
24. Okay, wow, good. And Karen, can you raise your hand here for everybody to see? Great. Karen, you were just on a trip out of the country.
I was.
Where were you?
Botswana.
Wow.
Not everybody was there.
Do you want to just tell us 2 minutes about your trip in Botswana?
I guess I would just say, if anyone has a strong desire to go to a part of the world that has a plethora of elephants and hippos, go to the Chobe River in Botswana. It was delightful.
Well, nice to have you back, Steve. How about Connie? Can you raise your hand for us? Connie.
I'm Connie, membership chair.
Connie does a lot of different things for us. She is the membership chair. Giving away tickets for the plant giveaway later tonight. Did I miss anybody? No, and I'm Maureen McFarland. These are our business members. We thank you very much for your patronage. And you connect with our chapter through fmpsnaples.org. Sign up for our newsletter, which is excellent. We also have started online plant sales. So the first one we did was the very first time. It was a little rough. We were waiting to get orders every couple minutes. I'd be checking. And then after about a week, we closed it and we had over 100 plants that we sold. So we were very happy. And then we've been doing some farmers markets and we had some leftover plants and we were worried about having them all summer long in this heat. You can imagine in pots taking care of them. So we thought we'd have a liquidation sale, summer liquidation sale of our inventory. Well, we put that online and within 45 minutes, it was sold out. Everything was sold. So we're kind of getting the feeling that maybe this is the way to go, that online plant sales for native plants might be the way that people would like to get native plants. It's difficult in this area in Collier County. We have to drive to a different county to get native plants. So that's what we're going to pursue among other things in the future. So please, if you have any ideas, Leslie Lander, Connie, and myself are in the plant sales committee. We'd love to hear.
Where were the plants being held prior to their sale?
At Leslie's house.
Okay. Oh. Not the university.
No, not in the IFAS yard. What we're thinking maybe is using the UF IFAS extension yard as a location pickup for plant sales. There are a number of master gardeners in the room here tonight. So that's why you're seeing part of it going on. Okay, we also have the iNaturalist project. The coordinator for that is Wade Gurley, and here's a beautiful picture of a native plant that was observed last month, Everglades water willow. So I hope everybody's signed up for iNaturalist. Jane, are you doing that?
No pressure.
No pressure.
I'm just looking at you.
I don't know. You don't have a phone. Okay. But you have some great stories to tell us about your participation in that. Okay, it is important if people could just sign up. It's free. It's great to be on iNaturalist. I use it to identify native plants that I'm not familiar with. And then taking a picture of it, it will ID the plant, give you information, and then it'll automatically go to this project here. And it's giving us some important information about native plants here in Collier County. All right, upcoming events. So we have our membership meeting Wednesday, September 7th. The speaker is Jay Horn, a professor from FGCU. If you do iNaturalist, you know he is the one who always comments and confirms or corrects the name of the native plant that you have taken a picture of. He is excellent. So he will be our speaker, overview of his work with native scrub flora. And then we'll have a field trip following that, Saturday, September 10th. Okay, well, now's the time for the feature presentation. And I think Karen is going to introduce Sally Stein.
All right, thank you, Maureen. So this evening we have Sally Stein with us. She is the Director of Public Programs at Audubon's Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. She joined Corkscrew Swamp in 2000, so it's been almost 2 years. It's been a long time. Manages the public education programs and events, leads community science programs, and is a lead instructor for the Florida Master Naturalist program. In addition, Sally assists in new management, development, and special projects at the sanctuary, including surveying giant trees of the sanctuary's ancient cypress forests. Sally received degrees from Clemson University and the University of South Carolina. Please join me in welcoming Sally. Thank you so much, Fern.
Okay, welcome everybody to the meeting tonight. I'm glad to be here to present to you tonight, and it's been a while since I've been here, so thank you for inviting me back. I need to come back to some of your meetings coming up. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about summer blooming plants at Corkscrew. And then I'll also throw in a few upcoming plants that should be blooming sometime soon for you to take a look out for. So, beneath the Summer Cypress Canopy is the title, and so we're going to be talking about, among other things, some of the orchids that we have there, maybe some of the ferns, some of the bromeliads, and some of the other blooming plants. All right, but first we'll talk about the cypress forest. So bald cypress are the main type of tree that we have there. We have about 740 acres of old growth bald cypress forests that are protected, which is the largest stand of them anywhere in the world, pretty much. We don't have the oldest tree though. The oldest tree is somewhere in North Carolina. It's over 2,000 years old. And cypress are really long-lived trees, obviously. You have one over 2,000 years old. They are related to the redwoods. They're in the same family as the redwoods. And they are
Sorry to interrupt. Can you all share could you all share the
usually
screen, please?
from about October through February. They lose their leaves in the fall, and then in February start sprouting new leaves again. So in summer they're in full growing mode. They have all their leaves out, photosynthesizing, and with all the rainfall that we get, they're pretty happy in the summer. But we do need the dry season for them to germinate and create new trees. And that's the thing about an old growth forest is you have kind of a mix of ages within the swamp, but you have some of the trees getting to their maximum age, some of the bigger trees. And Karen did mention that I helped with the cypress survey several years ago, and we did document over 60 trees that had a circumference of 17 feet or larger. And the biggest tree we found had a circumference of 24 feet. We found two about that size. So there's some good ones out there. And the estimate on the age of the trees at Corkscrew, even though it's been a cypress swamp for the past 5,000 years, the estimate on the oldest trees there are anywhere between 600 and 800 years old. Right, and this is just a map of the sanctuary. And for those of you who have been there before, you know where it is. But if you go out on Mockley Road on the way to Mockley, it's about 15 miles east of the interstate. So it's about a 45-minute drive from here this time of year, maybe an hour in season, in our busy season. The Corkscrew is over 13,000 acres, about 21 square miles, and it encompasses a variety of habitats, and it also includes a mitigation bank on its northwest corner. You can see some of the restored marshes up there. But the old growth forest is highlighted in that green kind of horseshoe shape, kind of in the middle of the south, to the south of the map. So that was 740 acres of bald cypress that were protected. And the boardwalk, if you can see it, is that little yellow squiggly line down near the bottom. So you can see the boardwalk only goes through about 700 acres of the 13,000 acre swamp, but it brings you out for all the habitats here. Well, this was just one of the giant trees on our survey. You can see it has a really massive trunk, but at the top, it has little, well, smaller, but still big branches going up, or parts of the trunk. So it has 4 different branches up near the top. At some point in the past, it lost its top, probably in a hurricane or something like that, but it's re-sprouted. So, but that probably happened a couple hundred years ago. But we did see effects from Irma, the latest hurricane that hit the Naples area, of trees re-sprouting after they lost their tops in that storm too. So because the swamp has been there a long time, there's some unique features about it. The canopy, of course, is pretty thick. Even in Irma, not all the trees fell down, a few here and there, some good ones came down. But most of the branches that are on the trees have been there for a long time. They've accumulated the soil from all the debris, like cypress needles falling down, branches, whatever. They've accumulated on top of those thick branches, which forms a pretty thick layer of soil up there, maybe an inch or inch and a half deep. typically. And that supports plant communities as well as some of the animals, like some of the insects and other things that use the cypress trees. So the canopy is really important for protecting things like our tropical species, like alligator flat, for instance, some of the orchid species and bromeliad species we have, to keep them from drying out or being affected by cold weather, the dry winter season. So, so the soil on the branches actually helps support colonies of plants. So here's one that you see a lot in the trees out there, the resurrection fern. This is an epiphytic fern. Usually grows attached to a tree trunk or tree branch. We see them on cypress as well as pond apple, a lot of times on oak trees and oak hammock type areas. And this is a fern that's pretty primitive. It can't retain water in it. If it's dry out, the leaves are gonna dry out and it turns brown, looks really crisp, doesn't look alive, but as soon as it rains within a few hours, it turns green again. So all through the summer, with all our rain that we've been having, it stays green, and this is the time of year that it reproduces. It makes spores like most of, all the other ferns that are out there. And I took this picture today, actually. You can see the nice story on the back of the resurrection fern in that picture. So the resurrection fern are pretty common out there. A lot of people don't realize what ferns are important for. But there are some things that eat young fiddleheads, but also they provide kind of a habitat for other things to live in, as well as just providing kind of places where seeds and things get stuck and kind of provides for habitat for other plants as well. Another group of plants we have out there in the trees are the epiphyte. They're also an epiphyte, but they're the bromeliads. We have mostly Tillandsia species at the sanctuary. There's about 10 different species of them. This one is called the Cardinal air plant. It's one of the common names for it. You guys probably know a few other ones. The giant, well, not the giant, but wild pine is a common name for it as well. But this one, Tillandsia fasciculata, is an endangered species. It never used to be endangered until the Mexican bromeliad people arrived here in Florida. And nowadays is considered an endangered species, although it's still fairly common out at the sanctuary. One bromeliad that we don't have out there much anymore is the giant air plant. So that one, we know of it in a few places, but it's not very common out there anymore because of the Mexican bromeliad beetle, which lays its eggs in the bromeliads, and larvae will eat the plant and end up killing it. And with something like the giant air plant, that one takes 8 to 12 years to mature. And if it kills it while it's young, it won't ever have a chance to produce seeds. And that's why the numbers are going down of that plant. I have seen them in some scrub habitat though. So I don't know if the weevil hasn't found its way to the dry scrub. But like the railhead scrub in North Naples, there's quite a few of the giant air plants that you'll see there in September if you want a field trip. So the deep water in the swamp is really deep this time of year, but as we go into the dry season, even the deepest spots in the swamp sometimes will dry out, sometimes for a month or two at a time. But the soil that's in there will retain water in it. It's kind of like a sponge. It's like partially decomposed organic material that makes up the soil. And even in the dry season, if you were to jump down in the swamp and grab a handful of it, give it a squeeze, you get water coming out of it. So that humidity helps protect things like orchids and other things in the swamps in the dry and cool parts of the year. So Corkscrew is home to at least 25 species of native orchids. Many of them are endangered or threatened. You can see the list here. We'll be going over some of the ones, we won't go over all of them today, but we'll go over some of the ones that bloom in the summer and in the early part of the fall. So, first of all, what is an orchid? Most of you guys are pretty familiar with orchids, but they are a diverse family of flowering plants. They have both the male and female structures of the plant fused into the column, which is right in the middle of this picture you can see there. They also share some other floral characteristics such as the lip, which is one of the petals of the plant that is modified. It's usually larger than the rest of the petals and very colorful. And a lot of the orchids are very fragrant too, which will attract insects, which are their main pollinators. So the first one we're going to look at is the butterfly orchid. This one blooms in the early part of the summer, usually as early as May. This year, in some places I've seen it, I saw it blooming in February. That's pretty unusual. It's usually May and June when this one's in bloom. So it has a flower that resembles a butterfly. Some people also call it the onion orchid because of the shape of its pseudobulbs. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. Here you go. So the pseudobulbs are kind of onion shaped. That's the picture on the left. And then the flowers will go through various shades of pinks and yellows as it matures. And hopefully it'll get pollinated and produces seed pods. So, and this one, you can find it, it says the cypress swamp, but you'll find it, I've seen it in mangroves before, pine trees. It's pretty adaptable, but it's found mostly in kind of mid to South Florida. It doesn't go too far north. Okay, the deep swamp, though, is where you find most of the orchids that are out in the swamp. This one is called the night scented orchid, or night fragrant orchid, some people call it. There's different common names for things. But Epinephrine nocturnum, it's an epiphytic orchid. It is an endangered species. We do have several of them out along the boardwalk that you can see blooming anytime between summer and January about. So they could be blooming anytime in that time frame. But typically it seems like more like September and October when we see them blooming, at least at Corkscrew. So, so here's one in full bloom. They really only stay open for a couple of days usually, and they're self-pollinating, so they can close right away. So you have to catch them right at the peak if you want to get a picture like this one. The other one was showing it kind of drooping a little bit. All right. Another epiphytic endangered species that we have out there is the Epinephrine and Fistula, which some people call the dingy flowered star orchid. Kind of dirty yellow color, or yellow and green, depending on when you catch it. The fresher flowers are usually more green, and then the older ones have a lot more yellow in it. But this can bloom any time of the year. We just had some blooming last week, but they've been blooming at various times of the year. So there's several of them out there. You can usually find one to bloom anytime you come, if you're looking for them. They don't have a huge flower. They have small flowers, but they're in big clusters, usually maybe 15 to 20 something blooms in each cluster. Here's a close-up. Wow. Really pretty when you see them that close. And so you can see this was kind of a fresh flower. It had a lot more green on. Not so dingy. All right. The umbrella star orchid, also known as the Florida star orchid, it's a different common name. Epinephrine floridense. This one is also endangered. It's really rare to find one anywhere in South Florida. But we do have one at least one in bloom right now along the boardwalk, which is really fun. So this one has kind of usually yellowish flowers, kind of whitish to yellowish to greenish, and kind of vary depending on just depending on conditions and also how fresh the flower is. So this one usually is attached to top ash trees and pond apple trees. And we used to have a good one near our South Lettuce Lake, but that one I think fell out in one of the storms we had. But we still have a couple of them around that you can find. Here's a close-up of a new flower just opening up, and this is the one that's in bloom right now out along the boardwalk. It's up in I think it's a pond apple tree. really pretty. We did lose a lot of orchids out of our trees in Hurricane Irma. We collected about 200 of them that fell onto the boardwalk, and we put them back in the trees. We did find a few of this particular orchid, the Epinephrine floridens. So this was one that we put back in the tree. And you can see it was in bloom, and it had produced 2 seed pods, which was pretty cool. So even if that plant didn't make it, at least it produced seed pods. Rigid epidendrum is one that resembles Epinephrine floridens. The shape of the leaves is a little bit thinner and they're stiffer. On the back, so you can see the shape of those compared to the rigidum. The rigidum is an endangered species also, but it's probably the most common orchid we have up. It doesn't have particularly showy flowers. They're just small little yellowish green things that usually get pollinated pretty quickly and turn into a seed pod. But this one will bloom pretty much in the late summer, early part of the fall through the early part of the spring. So this is one to keep an eye out for coming up soon. The yellow helmet orchid, this one is a beautiful spray of yellow when it's in bloom. They just started blooming at this sanctuary, but I heard, or I saw on Facebook actually, they're blooming down in Good Cypress back in June, I believe. But they are about to go into full bloom at Corkscrew. There's quite a number of these along the far edge of the boardwalk, the far side of the boardwalk. Here's a close up. You can see the sepals and petals form kind of a fib-like shape over the flower, and that's why they call it the helmet orchid, like the helmet. Okay. Most of you probably have seen this one before. The clamshell, Florida clamshell orchid, also an endangered species. This one has been poached quite a bit from our native swamps in the area. So we probably won't point this one out to people if it's too close to the boardwalk, but sometimes there's one blooming far enough away. But if you know what to look for, you can probably find them. So the clamshell orchid gets its name because of that clamshell-like shape to its flower. So this one can bloom anywhere from September through the spring. So it's one that should be blooming coming up here in the fall pretty soon. Sometimes you can find it more raspberry colored, sometimes more purple. So it just varies in color as well. Produces pretty obvious seed pods too. So here's one with seed pods all along it. Makes for neat pictures. And then of course, most people have heard about the ghost orchid as well. We have at least 3 ghost orchids that we've found along the boardwalk in recent years. This one that's in this picture is called the super ghost. Mike Owen from Takahashi named it that because it's the biggest ghost orchid that's ever been found. It produces the most flowers. It's also the highest one up in the tree anyone's ever found. It's about 60 feet up in a bald cypress tree. This year, it's produced probably 10 flowers so far. It started blooming just at the end of June, and right now it has 2.5 flowers on it. There were 3, but a caterpillar ate part of one of them. But it has several more buds on it. You can see the buds in this picture, tadpoles or something. But you can see the buds, how they start off small and they would gradually get bigger. They get a really long nectar spur on them before they open. So usually you can tell right before they're open because their nectar spur is like 4 or 5 inches long at that point. Wow. So the super ghost, this was a picture from a few years ago. You can see this one has seed pods on it. Those little green bean looking things there. This one's kind of a dried up one. So those are the seed pods. If it gets pollinated, it produces seed pods, and hopefully we'll get more ghost orchids out there eventually. So the super ghost is always a fun one to watch out for because we've seen it with as many as 14 different flowers on it at once. It usually produces quite a few, and now it's had a flower on it every month of the year. But its prime blooming period is typically July, August, and September. Here's a close-up of the Ghostwork Degrees. This is how you find them if they're not in bloom, which is really hard. But if you're in a swamp, you have to like get out here in the swamp to look for them probably. But this is what you would look for, just greenish, grayish roots on the tree that have those gray kind of dash marks along the root. And that's all that's visible of that orchid if it's not in bloom. Here's another one that you can see from the boardwalk. This is a smaller one. It just has two flowers. It's produced 3 flowers throughout the course of the summer, and it has one more bud on it that might have been seen. All right. This particular orchid is a really small one also. This is the needle root orchid. Some people call it the jingle bell orchid. You may have heard it by that name before. They're in the same genus as the ghost orchid, the Dendrophylax. So this is also a leafless epiphytic orchid. So you don't really notice it unless it's blooming, and even if it is blooming, you might not even notice it because it's such a small little plant. So it's called a twig orchid because it usually grows on thin or thinner branches, usually in semi-sunny areas, kind of on the outer edges of the tree. I know a lot of times when branches fall out of the trees and storms and land on the boardwalk, we'll find them on the branches that have fallen. Of course, if we find them, we try to put it back in the trees somewhere where they might survive. But these particular plants can grow in anything from cypress trees to, I've seen them on citrus trees and low pot trees before. So if you have any fruit trees in your yard, you might want to check the branches. You might have a surprise on you. So here's another look at what they look like on the thin twigs with the thin roots and flowers, and the seed pods are really small as well. So that one doesn't bloom in the summer, but coming up here in the fall, that's one that people look out for as early as October, going into like November usually. It's usually done by December. But this time of year, the roots are photosynthesizing, kind of beefing up for the blooming period. So they're usually bright green in the summertime. All right. Some other summer blooming plants that we have out there that aren't orchids include the scarlet rose mallet. Also, some people call it the scarlet hibiscus. This usually blooms throughout the course of the summer. Usually by September, you might still have 1 or 2 blooming, but this is a good time of year to see them in bloom in the middle of the summer. Another hibiscus, the swamp rose mallet. This one usually blooms in the middle of the summer, like right now in July also. Usually grows in the marshes though, not necessarily in the swamp, but kind of on the edges of the swamp. Another really large flower that's easy to spot when you're out there. The water lily that we saw earlier, we use a different common name for it, the tropical royal blue water lily. That's another common name for it, or elegant water lily. It's one of several species of water lilies that bloom in the summer, but this is probably the most common of them. But they're beautiful if you get a chance to see them. And they usually have kind of a purplish or bluish tinge in their white petals. The swamp milkweed, this is one I know a lot of native plant people like to try and get their hands on. I was hoping to bring one in tonight for the plant raffle, but all my plants were all chewed up from caterpillars eating them. But this is one of the milkweed species that's found at the sanctuary. Usually found in hydrocanic areas as well as cypress, swamp, and wet prairies, any kind of wet and moist area, up to maybe a foot deep in water. But it's one of the 5 milkweed species we have at Corkscrew. It has beautiful pink flowers when it blooms. If it gets a chance to, the caterpillars haven't eaten everything. But it is a host plant for the monarch, the queen, and the soldier butterflies. And they seem to prefer this milkweed over other ones, if you have it in your garden. And there's a variety of other plants that bloom in the summer. I just kind of chose a few to kind of highlight. But this one is the southeastern, oops, I left the end off that. Southeastern sunflower, Helianthus aggressive. This usually grows in the wet prairies. At Corkscrew and other places like the Pepper Ranch out in Mockley and other places around. It usually blooms kind of at the peak in the end of September, but usually the first week of October is when you expect to see them in bloom. They just cover huge areas. Right now, the plants at Corkscrew are about maybe 4 feet tall, but they'll get to be like 7 feet tall or so. So they're still growing, but some of them are already blooming. We have a few of them blooming already, which seems a bit early. But you can see there's thousands more of the plants out there. So if you come out to the swamp in early October, you'll see them in full bloom. It's going to be a good show this year, it looks like. So, but other plants that we have in bloom include various small things like some of the hypericums, St. John wort, various species of those. We have Coreopsis still blooming, although that's more of a spring bloomer. Some of that's blooming as well. The Melochias spicata, which is sometimes called chocolate weed, that one's blooming like crazy as well. There's quite a few flowers that only bloom in the summertime, kind of spring through fall, that time of year. So it's any time of year to get out there to see some of the unique species. But throughout the course of the year, there's other things in bloom, so you never know what you're going to see. But it's good to kind of get a feel for what's out there at different times of the year. I did bring in a bloom chart if anybody wants to pick one up. That Paul Martin Brown put together for Collier County, using data from Mike Millen and other people in the area as far as the blooming periods for some of the orchid species. So you can pick them up here on the front desk if you'd like a copy of that. And got one more thing to share with you. This is not a plant, but it's still really interesting. It only occurs out there in the summertime. It's a bioluminescent fungus that grows on the tree. And it's really, really teeny. It's very small. It's basically about the size of a pinhead. It's really teeny. So to see it glowing like this, you have to go out on a really dark night when there's no moon. It's very hard to see them unless they're peak blue. Then you can see them even with a little bit of moonlight. But most nights, if you want to see them, it's hard. You have to have no light on, no moon, and just go out there in the dark. We do leave night walks in the summertime, and one of them we got to see it this year. So it's kind of hit or miss when they're at their peak bloom, or peak blue, I should say. Here's a close up of one, and that took quite a bit of effort to try to figure out how to get a picture of it. We used a tripod with a macro camera on a timer, like a remote timer, that you could turn it on from far away, so you weren't wiggling the boardwalk and swatting at mosquitoes at the same time. And it was a 2-minute exposure to get that picture. So pretty hard to get a picture of it. And we still are not sure of the species of fungus. So if anybody has any fungus experts, let me know. We think it's in the Mycena genus, but we're not really sure about that. But Corkscrew is kind of in a temperate and tropical zone. It's a mix of climates, and we have a mix of plants out there. So the cypress swamp especially is really important for protecting some of the more tropical species, especially in the winter when it's dry and cold, sometimes cold out. Hasn't been cold much lately, but we do sometimes get frost. We did have a couple hours of frost this year. And so basically the humidity from the swamp helps protect all the plants, all the tropical plants that are out there. All right. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'll be happy to answer them if you want. Yes.
So when the hurricane happened and the orchids that fell down that you put them back up, did you have to use wire or how did you?
We use like a natural fabric like rib, like I don't know what you call it, like jute or something. It's kind of a fabric-y thing that would eventually degrade, biodegrade. And hopefully, we're hoping that the roots would attach to the trees that we put them on.
It's really interesting. How high did you have to go?
It really depended on, it depended on the actual plant. Some like to be really close to the water. That the one I was talking about, the Epinephrine and Fistula, likes to be higher up above the water, so we had to bring a ladder out there and a canoe, set it up and try and get as high up in the pond apple trees we could to put that one in. So, and we consulted orchid experts like Mike Owen as far as where to put certain species before we put it back. And not all of them survived. We went out there, we go out there occasionally. They were just, there was so much to do right after that storm that we couldn't get to some of them right away. It took several trips out there to get them all back up in the trees, but hopefully some of them did. Yep. Any other questions?
Check the box.
Oh, yes, sure.
Repeat the 5 species.
They're just asking if you can repeat the 5 species.
Oh, and I don't know if I can remember them. We have the white vine, which is the milkweed family. We have the swamp milkweed. We have the prairie milkweed, the bright orange one. I can't remember the species names off the top of my head, but we have a long-leafed one that's kind of variegated looking. It has multiple colors in it. I can't remember the other one. But we do have 5 species on our species list. And if anybody would like a copy of our species list at the sanctuary, I'd be glad to email it to Karen and she can maybe distribute it to you if you're interested.
It's just so hard to raise on your own.
They are, some of them are, the swamp milkweed does well as long as you have it on in a wet area, or if you have it on like a little irrigation you're posting, it does pretty well. Even in your yard or whatever.
I've tried.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do the swamp hibiscus, but not that.
But not that.
Yeah. I have a swamp hibiscus that at the beginning when I started to the leaves look like marijuana plant, and everybody used to tell me, Alicia, you're growing marijuana. Until it bloomed, everybody didn't believe it. They're like, oh, you're just smoking pot.
Yeah, but I haven't had luck with that one, but I don't have a problem with the swamp milkweed in my yard. So I guess it just depends on the habitat you're in or how much sunlight it's getting maybe or something like that. I'm not sure.
Wow.
But
I have
Yeah.
one milk.
yeah, but I can't remember what the species is, unfortunately. But if you want, I can send you the species list by email.
No, we want to see.
We're gonna continue trying.
All right, cool. Like I said, I was gonna bring one in here to raffle off, but they were all chewed up.
That's okay, we would have taken it anyway.
Next time, I'll try and come over to your next meeting to bring one in. Maybe they'll have recovered by then, we'll see. All right, any other questions? You wanna check the chat?
Thank you, but yeah, it looks like we don't have any other questions. So,
So do you have a good resource for the native orchids to identify the different flowers on each of them?
Well, Paul Martin Brown's book, the Orchids of Florida, is the best one, I think, for helping with ID. But it covers the whole state, but you can see in there where it occurs. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all very much.